Hi, go. I hope you've enjoyed the BX series as it's got to so far. I'm going to show you a little bit on the Mark 1 tonight. So, the plan with the Mark 1 is the last video you saw of it, it had just basically blown the bottom hose, done something, I'm not really sure what, and it basically got very hot, and I had to have it recovered home by the AA. And thankfully, I had the most hilarious mechanic from South Africa who had one of his first cars. So it was probably the best breakdown I've ever had in my life because he just loved the car. So yeah, that was probably the best experience I could have had, because normally I don't have very good experiences with breakdown companies, because modern cars just get towed in, they don't really get nothing really happens to them at the side of the road normally. So with older cars it's a bit of a different kettle of fish normally, because you can normally bodge them at the side of the road and get them home. So but anyway, I've not done much with the car since. I've just literally put it in the garage and left it, because I thought, well, I've got the BX, I want to get the BX in the best condition I can, so put it in the garage, leave it alone, and we'll deal with it at some point. And some point's kind of, I think, going to be now. Now, if you watch the channel for a while, 5 years ago, 5.5 now, I did head gasket on this. I gave the top end of the engine a complete rebuild. The head gasket that came off is still over there, hanging on the wall of fame. I have this thing about when I do a first head gasket on a different engine, I like to keep the head gasket, so I've got one from Mark 1 then one from the BX there. Why the hell not? So did the head gasket 5 years ago. So I know everything's relatively fresh to a degree, because obviously it's I think, trying to think how many miles it's done, it's probably done about 10,000 if you're lucky, but because obviously it's the amount of time it's been there, it's like I suppose I think it's a bit like rubber. It has expiry date based on mileage and actual age itself. So yeah, so in terms of the amount of miles it's done since I last did it, it's not really that much. But in terms of time, and actually it's been nearly 3 years sat in the garage up on stands with half the back end cut off. So in theory it's a bit of a weird one to work out. But basically speaking, I've done the gasket on it before. I know the general health of the engine, and therefore this time I'm kind of potentially going to do something a bit more crazy. Last time I took it apart knowing that the bottom end of the engine was okay, there was no piston slack going on, anything like that. It just was frankly a case of the cooling system to the firing ring had gone on one cylinder, so it was just puffing away like a fish in water, just buffing bubbles out. Every time it heard a misfire, you saw the bubbles come up with the expansion tank, so you knew damn well that was where the problem was. It wasn't between oil galleries or anything like that, it was just that bit. But obviously run it long enough and you're going to get problems. This time round, the car's now done 55,000 miles, and so I'm not sure what it done beforehand. I know I got it on about 41, I think, so yeah, might be on about 45 possibly, not really sure to be honest. But anyway, what I'm getting at here is it's now done 55,000 miles, so the bottom end of the engine is 55,000 miles old. The valves and all the guides and all the valve seats are the same as that, because all I did before was take it off, clean everything up, put it back on the new head gasket. Didn't do any valves because there was no need to do it. Now since the head gasket was last done, before it went in the garage waiting for its bodywork to be sorted out and the structure of the car to be welded, I noticed that, and this was actually the last day I was on the road before that, because I was in a bit of a crap state up here, and it started running a bit strange on I think it was drive it day. Yeah, it was drive it day 19, I believe. and took it out for one last drive, thinking, yeah, just have one last drive, re-enjoy it, and then we'll stick it in the garage. So we've left it alone with good memories. And on that particular day, it started running really weird, and couldn't work out why the hell it was not idling properly at all. It was driving me absolutely crazy, because you know what I'm like, I'm pernickety as hell. It's got to run perfectly, otherwise I'm not impressed with it. So put it in the garage. It was running a bit funny. I'll just put it away, just leave it for a different day when I'm in a better state of mind. And what kept on coming up whenever I was doing little checks on it was check the points, check the plugs, check this, check that. Everything was checking out fine. So did a compression test, and the only thing that came back was the fact that 2 cylinders were down on compression. So it was like, right, so either that points to one of potentially 3 things. One of which is where had the firing rings on the head gasket developed a leak, which don't think is likely because it wasn't bubbling, which would therefore be the same symptoms as before, so that would tell you, okay, yep, we've got that problem again. Secondly, okay, maybe we've got some leakage around the piston rings. Maybe the piston rings on 2 cylinders have gone and they're just leaking, but again, there was no blue smoke or excessive crankcase pressure, so you'd kind of think that you'd be getting something, because the gas would be pushing past, so therefore it's got to go somewhere, and it wasn't coming out the back because it was blooming clean as a whistle and exhaust. So the only other thing really would possibly be that the valve seats had started playing up on those 2 cylinders. Now obviously it's a bit strange that it would go across 2, because normally it just have it's normally be very, very random. But the fact that it was on the 2 middle ones, it could potentially mean that maybe there was maybe a fractional leak, maybe. But anyway, so I had the two middle cylinders, 2 and 3 on, that was showing slightly lower compression, which was making it run a bit funny and idle. And when I went to 50th anniversary in Bewley last year, yes, it was running nicely, but not to my capacity, not to my satisfaction. It was kind of almost like a wobbly rough idle. It was idling on all 4, but you could just tell that something wasn't quite right somewhere. And the bottom line here is what I'm trying to say in the longest possible way, because yeah, this is how my brain thinks. It goes around all these blooming different blooming ballparks, and yeah. I have in the other garage, when I reshelled my Super 5, the original engine from my Super 5 reshell was a 956, which is exactly the same capacity as this engine is here, with 15,000 miles on the clock. Now I know, because I drove that engine for about 500 miles, that it's a damn good little blooming engine. It's tight as a nut. I mean, when I looked at that shell, I took the cap off the oil, and if you've ever seen a picture in an owner's handbook where, especially in the old school ones, where they're showing you how to like adjust tappet, stuff like that, because that's what they used to tell you to do, you'd be able to picture the picture of a rocker of the top of a head that is completely brand new, immaculately clean. So yeah, the rocker cover inside was immaculately clean. I've never seen an engine that was quite so flipping clean, like it was factory fresh. Now, kind of told you, yeah, that's done 15k. It's barely turned a wheel really in the entire age of it. But the idea I've got is, now obviously the Mark 1 does need a blooming respray. End of. The back quarters definitely need some filler work. One side needs a little bit of rejigging on the metalwork, where I didn't know what I was doing, so I just did the best I could, and it is as it is, so I've got to adjust it a bit. So bodywork wise, it will need to spray. Now, under the engine bay here, I have cleaned out best I can, but there are areas where it would just be nicer to be able to have the whole lot out and say, you know what, let's just make it as nice as we can in places where it's kind of out of sight, if you like. That sounds really silly to just say that, but on the same score, if you make so what I'm thinking of doing basically is pulling the engine, and I can then give the engine itself a really good rebuild by basically taking the 15,000 mile lump I've got apart and putting all the good bits out of that engine that will fit into this block. Now you're probably thinking, why the hell wouldn't you just put the whole engine straight in? That's where it gets tricky. Because between a Mark 1 and Mark 2 Renault 5, there are very few things that actually interchange. Yeah, just to make life complicated, because Renault and because French. So between a Mark 1 and Mark 2, the only thing you could really change between the engines, depending on the age, the very late Mark 1s, you could possibly get away with spark plugs and possibly ignition leads if they're all one size, possibly rotor arm. That's about as far as it goes, because the general layout of a Mark II engine is completely different. The water pump's on the opposite end, the camshaft's longer, there's two bits of block that cut off to put it into the Mark 1 block engine bay. So basically the only thing that I can take from that engine to put in this one are the pistons and liners, in reality. So my thought is, if I'm taking the whole car apart, and I've also got to do head gasket because we know that's now faulty, definitely, but if I've got the head off anyway, and I'd like to clean the engine bay up and therefore take the engine out, it's a prime opportunity to say, right, we'll strip the whole thing down, we'll strip the other engine down as well, we'll take the good pistons lines out of that I know are 15,000 miles old and practically like new, pop them in this block, potentially have the camshaft tested, maybe have it reprofiled so it's as like new as it can be. Same with the crankshaft, have it, I very much doubt there's any issues with it being over or anything like that, probably just need a damn good polish because it's got no bottom end knock that I can hear, so very much doubt there'll be any issues there. But essentially, the probably most expensive part of doing a rebuild on these, is the piston liners, because essentially you're doing a rebore, which normally you'd be looking at taking the entire block out, cutting away material to enlarge it, then putting new big pistons in, so it gets very expensive very quickly. Whereas if I've got a new set of liners, that's just saving me a few hundred quid straight away. I know it has, because I've looked into it a few times when I did the Renault 10, because that was, yeah, I only did those because I found a damn good deal on them. So yeah, that's kind of what I'm thinking of doing with the Mark 1. Now the question is, do I I'm thinking I might take the plugs out, do a compression test now post breakdown, so that I can sort of say, right, this is where we're at with it now. And I'm pretty sure there's a few people of you out there on here that will rather like to see that, because you do like to see me doing the more technical stuff, and to be honest, I love doing technical stuff because it's completely nerdy, and I've probably been nerd. I love it. So yeah, and of course I love my little Mark 1, because unless I'm not sure if I've said it before, 8 years it took me to find this whole thing, and very wise it was. So yeah, so yeah, the bottom line is, what I would like to do with the Mark 1 is do a compression test on it, see exactly what the current health in this particular situation is right now, then start taking it all apart, possibly find some boxes so I don't lose half of it, because let's face it, I'll do that, and then take this all apart, or undo everything that attaches the engine to the body shell of the car, and then what I can do is get the figure out a way of getting it out, because the funny thing is, on the Mark 1, the reason why I'd be taking it out is because it's actually easy to take the sump off with the engine out, because the anti-roll bar goes straight across it, because obviously in the Mark 1 the engine's that way, lengthways in the car, whereas on the Mark 2 it's that way, so it's quite tight because you've got to wiggle it around the subframe, but you haven't got the anti-roll bar directly underneath the sump. I mean, there's a lot of things I haven't done on this car yet, and the bottom half engine is one of them. So to be honest, maybe it's just an excuse for me to take it apart. Don't know, but yeah. Yeah, just be lovely to have it running really sweetly the way I like it to. So, but yeah, we're going to hopefully take the engine out, which will then obviously mean all the engine bays all empty anyway. Can then get it taken away, get it resprayed, because I've not really got facilities for respraying, not to do a decent job of it that I'll be actually happy with. So yeah, and then the idea being that it can then come back, I can put my engine in that I've just rebuilt, and I know damn well that it's got low mileage pistons and liners in it. Potentially the bottom half will be maybe, or hopefully at least polished. It'll just go back nicely, and yeah, that's the idea. So I'll stop waffling because I'm just going on now, but yeah, you get the idea. The Mark 1, I would like to give it some love and care. So yeah.